Today we're gonna be reacting to Can Kong Save Skull Island from the Night Feeder. This video is by Goji Center, link in the description below.
Today, the existence of an entire biome is at stake upon the arrival of a true monster. That's right, a new predator has moved into town. A creature so evil and cruel that it will make any other crazy monster look like a teddy bear. The terrible Night Feeder. In this episode, we will put this entire island, along with its terrain, creatures, and inhabitants, to see if they can put up a fight or are destined to become a pile of corpses. This is the supernatural against an entire ecosystem.
Supernatural
versus monsters. So sit back, subscribe, and hold on real tight as we uncover the aftermath of the Night Feeder against Skull Island. This episode will blend the supernatural with the grounded realm we live in, given that the creature we are focusing on today is armed with inexplicably powerful weaponry. To have a good idea of what would happen if the Night Feeder stepped foot on Skull Island, we first need to understand what this thing really is and what it's capable of. This Night Feeder was no small animal, but it wasn't too huge either. In Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, all creatures don't necessarily have a set size. These vary according to how powerful they appear on screen.
Bro, what's a gargoyle doing there?
They are currently facing. We didn't really get to see it for too long, but by looking at some images, we can tell that this guy was around the size of a large Suchomimus. Its overall shape seemed to be raptor-like, with a blend of other dinosaurs such as a Baryonyx with its elongated snout and Therizinosaurus thanks to its very long claws. This slender build allowed this thing to move at extremely fast speeds through the forests, aided with good night vision and fast reflexes. And if this wasn't enough, this animal could have been a deadly screech which strongly irritated, wounded, and disabled anyone unfortunate enough to hear it. But we have a little problem here. If we're going to migrate all these attributes to a more realistic universe, we need to account for something we like to call cartoon physics, which the Night Feeder relied heavily on in this show. So how can something like this be plausible in real life? The best we can do in this case is assume that this Night Feeder is composed of materials and gifted with abilities that are purely fictional. The perfect example of this is its claws. As we've seen in the show, these can cut through literally anything with no resistance. The only way this would be possible in real life would be if these claws were composed of a material that is practically unbreakable, stronger than titanium itself. But that's
vibranium.
These would also have to be sharpened along the edges if these were to actually be able to inflict clean cuts, not lose any sharpness in the process, and also be powered by extremely strong musculature, be fastened by durable tissues, and move at supernatural speeds, and an unbreakable bone structure. Yes, we have to keep the supernatural element here, or else this wouldn't make any sense. All these attributes combined gives us a creature that is almost invincible in real life. This animal would also look a little different than in the cartoon, so here we recreated a more realistic form of a Night Feeder. Something more anatomically
still looks deadly
and fitting for our Skull Island scenario. Now that we have our more realistic Night Feeder, let's now drop
claws are bigger in the realistic version.
In previous episodes, nearly every animal on the planet seeks to meet its biological needs in order to be successful in any biome. Breathable air, water, food, body temperature, and shelter. The Night Feeder, however, is not your typical animal that can just roam around at any time. No, we must also mention that this animal does suffer from an extreme case of photophobia, which is basically discomfort in bright light. But in the Night Feeder's case, it's discomfort in any moderate light. That's right, as we continue the episode, we'll discuss why this is bad for the Night Feeder. So having said this, we now know that most of the Night Feeder's actions will take place under the cover of darkness, which will ultimately suck for a lot of the creatures we're about to discuss. We'll go over the main ones really quickly, starting with the Skur Buffalo, which would most likely serve for nothing else but a source of food and entertainment. Yeah, turns out that this Night Feeder doesn't necessarily kill to eat, but it also kills just because. This thing finds pleasure in witnessing its victims feel fear, and
just like the Indominus,
and seeing body parts fly all over the place. Since this thing wields unstoppable cutting power, not to mention that this animal prefers to kill armored creatures, and knowing Skull Island, there's tons of that here. Drinking water wouldn't be a problem if it gets ambushed by a mire squid, as its claws would literally make instant work of these soft, squishy tentacles. Icarus tigers would be able to detect an ominous creature nearby, but would quickly get dismembered by a swift attack. Death jackals, snakes, vine stranglers,
Damn.
and longlegs would easily be dispatched by the Night Feeder. But what about a more robust animal, such as the Spore Mantis, which is literally a walking tree? So it turns out that Primal does showcase the Night Feeder effortlessly cut through thick logs with just one swing. So, unfortunately for these creatures, which could now grow as big as redwoods, would be rendered to wood chips if they encountered a Night Feeder. Now, let's talk about ambush predators. These animals, for example, hunt in the water, too deep for the Night Feeder to approach from the shore. They would still move too slow to avoid a lethal swing from the Night Feeder. Siren Jaws are a bit different. The only way these could kill the Night Feeder is if it literally steps inside its mouth trap.
Night Feeder
But the
is
Night Feeder
power.
big for this, meaning that the only way to attack the Night Feeder would be by a set-up ambush. But being a predator that moves and attacks really quickly, it only means that its reflexes would also have to be just as quick, making an attack on the Night Feeder a suicidal act. So what can possibly beat this thing? Skull crawlers? No, if this thing can smash through entire tree trunks, it's possible that not even the big skull crawler Ramarak could stand a chance against this Night Feeder.
What?
That's right, 100% of the time this Night Feeder would detect the skull crawler first, running from one direction to the other, inflicting thick cuts capable of dismembering the skull crawler in seconds. So is there anything that can fight back? Let's find out. If you're enjoying this episode and want to hear a more
Kong
discussion,
is the only one who can fight back.
podcast. Looking back at
Unless if he has his
by the Night
axe,
Feeder, there's
then
nothing that would have stopped this from leaving evidence of its wrongdoings. As daylight begins shedding light on the Night Feeder's mess, there would be certain creatures around here that will take note of the evidence. The first being, you guessed it, Kong. Now, in retrospect, it's
guessed it
that
correct.
Kong might have heard the butchery happening during the nighttime, instigating two scenarios. One, he goes out in search of this animal in the dark. Bad idea. Remember that this animal can cut through literally anything, including this animal's leg. Now, to be fair, Kong's leg would be a lot thicker than any tree trunk. That's if we are referring to big 337-foot tall Kong. 1973 Kong's legs would be fair game to get critically injured and perhaps risking it to get killed if he's no longer able to stand up. Bigger Kong would still get injured, but not badly enough to handicap him, allowing him to take off at a safe distance until the next morning. Which leads us to our next scenario. Number 2, Kong wakes up the next morning and sees the aftermath left behind by the Night Feeder. Corpses covering the forest, maimed guts, body parts, bones all over the floor. Stuff that was just killed, but not eaten. We'd like to imagine that Kong acknowledges the circle of life and knows that some of these predators hunt to eat because they
Oh, he's ready.
or else they'll die. Except this one doesn't, and seeing a bunch of dead animals lying around without being eaten only means that there's a creature around here that must be eliminated. But it's daytime, and Night Feeders aren't active right now. It is
Hence the name Night. And he doesn't
This guy will always
feeds anything.
a tar-like oily substance from all parts of its skin. This in turn will stick to anything that this thing makes body contact with. Leaves, trunks, the floor, almost everything, leaving a trail of gooey stuff behind. Kong, being a smart titan, will eventually notice this stuff and most likely end up following this trail to its source, whatever it may be, a cave, tunnel, any crevice. Here, Kong can either 1. Pummel this shelter, exposing the Night Feeder to broad daylight, rendering it defenseless and easily crushed, or 2. The shelter caves in on top of the Night Feeder, or the entrance is sealed shut by Kong. This animal would be able to dig its way out, but it would have to be done in broad daylight. Either way, this particular scenario proves too much for the Night Feeder. But is this the only animal that can kill this creature? Let's discuss the final weakness that this Night Feeder has. This tar excretion is also flammable. That's right, now photophobia is beginning to make more sense. Anything bright, such as fire itself, is something that the Night Feeder is literally terrified of, simply because once this makes contact with its skin, the entire creature would catch on fire, killing it in a matter of moments. Interestingly, there is an animal that would actually fare better against the Night Feeder than most other animals: the magma turtle. As the name suggests, this animal's insides are swimming in magma, meaning that if a stupid night feeder just so much as touches this turtle, and it's game over for the demon raptor. What else? In Primal, the night feeder was
Demon
ultimately killed by
raptor.
spear, a hominid using fire. There just so happens to be a group of people here on Skull Island known as the Iwi. We'd like to imagine that after running into dead corpses,
So it is back in those
Lakdar,
days.
they'd eventually figure out that this crap is flammable, discovering its weakness and go right after it. Or always carry fire with them. After this, it would only be a matter of time before the night feeder will fall prey to some of these humans. Believe it or not, there could be a creature that could actually, by definition, hunt down the night feeder. The Psycho Vulture. Yeah, this
What
animal
the hell?
can fly in groups of
Oh.
many individuals, go on crazy killing sprees, and fire lightning. Yeah, just one strike of these can spell doom for this
Lightning.
night feeder.
Fire!
Shots. Realistically, this Titan would almost never make contact with the night feeder, since most of its attention while active would be on radiation-rich animals of Titan proportions. So it wouldn't necessarily waste time on a night feeder. These animals would most likely stay far away from each other's way. But as discussed earlier, while it is true that this night feeder would be able to lay waste to most of the animals here in Skull Island, it won't be able to kill everything. Beginning from day one, it's likely that its days would be numbered in this island. Skull Island will hold its title as the land of death, even for the terrible night feeder. If it wasn't for its flammable weakness, this would have been a different scenario.
Thank you for watching. If you wanna watch more videos, check here.